I'm going to get started. I've got a bit of a long intro, so just bear with me and we'll get to the good stuff, but I've got to do all the housekeeping first. Right, Leah, are you happy for me to do my bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So, good morning, everyone. I'm Lauren, and I'm the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Officer here at the university. It's really lovely to see you all. Thank you so much for coming along to today's Black History Month event, Race and Participation in Sport and Exercise. So before we get into it, I'm just going to do a bit of housekeeping and get that out of the way. First things first, I just wanted to say that originally we had planned for this event to take place in Heritage Quay. So I think it's important that we quickly note a bit of information about the archives. So Heritage Quay looks after two national sporting collections of international significance, the Rugby Football League Archive and England Netball Archive. For anyone interested in researching race and participation at elite levels in these sports, these collections are an invaluable resource. You can find out how to use the online catalogue and how to make an appointment to view materials on our website, which is just heritagequay.org. The archive is open to researchers on Mondays and Tuesdays, and Heritage Quay's current exhibition, which is open 7 days a week, looks at the history of Rugby League World Cups and includes a display of material relating to Clive Sullivan, who in 1972 became the first black person to captain any Great Britain sporting team. So this is going to be open until the 22nd December, so if you are about in Huddersfield, be sure to come and have a look. So, right, onto this housekeeping, so bear with me. So you will notice that this is a Teams webinar. So you'll notice that you can clearly see and hear our guest speakers here, but they cannot see and hear you. This is just because our event today is an in-conversation style panel, and it makes it much more straightforward for Leah, Maggie and Jermaine to discuss the topics between themselves and ensure we don't interrupt their flow. There will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end, so if you do have a question that pops into your head throughout, please use the Q&A function, which is in the middle of the toolbar at the top, the icon with the two speech bubbles, and we'll try and get to it at the end, time permitting. We will be recording this event so that we can share with other students and colleagues, but as I said, it'll only be the panellists that we can hear or see, so don't worry about being caught out munching on a biscuit or trying to get your cat off a laptop because we cannot see you. Captions. So live captions can be turned on individually by going to the three dots, scrolling down to where it says turn on live captions, and that should get them started for you. And just to round up, I'd like to echo one of my favourite virtual housekeeping reminders from Dr. Bernice Golding. Please make sure you're all sitting comfortably and that you have a beverage to hand. Hopefully you know where your toilets are located, and please do be aware that if your fire alarm sounds, it's more than likely not a drill, so please keep yourself safe. And as always, please bear with us if we do have any internet or technical difficulties. Hopefully everything will run smoothly, fingers crossed. So without further ado, let's get into the good stuff. So Black History Month happens annually in October, and it's an opportunity for us to educate ourselves, share stories and understand the impact of Black heritage and culture, as well as celebrating and promoting the achievements of African and Caribbean communities. Today we are here to talk about representation in sport, shout about the achievements of our fantastic speakers here with us today, and greater our understanding when it comes to barriers to participation and improving experiences within sport and physical activity. Here to share with us their career journeys and experiences within the sphere of sport and fitness today are Leah, Maggie and Jermaine. So let me just take a minute to introduce you to them all. Leah Asante was born and raised in Scotland before moving to London to work as a musculoskeletal podiatrist. Growing up, her interest lay in athletics before moving into the world of football. She is one of only 400 women to have achieved a UEFA B coaching licence in football and one of only a handful of black women. Leah used her profession within the sporting world to help sports people achieve greater results within their discipline. It was during this period that her interest in research was ignited, recognising that her experience in practice did not reflect literature, particularly amongst black athletes, and on the most part did not exist. Leah moved to the University of Huddersfield in 2020 to work as a senior lecturer, where she's currently working on her PhD. Maggie Birkenshaw was born and grew up in Huddersfield. Her school years were spent at a local primary school and secondary schools where she achieved sufficient academic qualifications but excelled at sport, in particular netball. Maggie was selected to represent England at netball and spent the following 13 years representing England across various age groups and travelling the world. Maggie joined West Yorkshire Police at age 20. Her policing career spanned 30 years and was extremely diverse. After retiring from the police, Maggie spent 2.5 years here at the University of Huddersfield as a security manager. and after leaving that role now works as a netball coach, working with elite athletes within Netball Super League franchise Leeds Rhinos. And last but by no means least, we have Jermaine. Jermaine Akins is a health and wellbeing coordinator and personal trainer. Jermaine's background has always been health, sport and fitness. However, last year he added story writing to his skill set. He self-published children's storybook named Guess Who I Want to Be, and was also featured in the book Windrush 3 Generations, both of which we will send out information about in our follow-up email. Jermaine has previously worked at the University of Huddersfield as a personal trainer, where he set up and ran the Girls Who Lift class, which I think we definitely need to bring back because I've heard loads of fantastic things about that. So hopefully Active Hud can get on that. So yeah, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. Excuse my really long intro there. I'm now going to shut up and pass you over to Leah, who's going to lead today's discussion. Thanks, Leah.
Okay, thank you, Lauren, and hi everyone, and welcome to this session on race and participation in sport and exercise. Now, before I get into conversation with Maggie and Jermaine, I just want to read out a few stats. The first set is from Sport England 2021. So it reports that only 3% of board members identify as Black across the 130 Sport England and UK sport funded bodies, and that's in contrast to around 30% of professional football players of the UK's. That's in contrast to around 30% of professional players of the UK's most popular sport, which is football, who are Black. There's also a worrying lack of representation in decision-making positions across all areas away from the pitch. And I'm sure if you've heard the news and you follow sport, you would have heard a lot about that. Now, when we consider activity levels within different ethnic groups, it is found that within the Black community and the Asian community, we're only seeing 55% and 50% respectively of people who remain active, and that is in contrast to those of mixed white British or white other ethnicities who come in at 68%, 63% and 65% respectively. So again, you can see that there is a large difference between Black and Asian and others. Now, Sporting Equals 2022 found that when they conducted their research, they found that the over 80% of people from Black and minority ethnic backgrounds had experienced discrimination in some form within the sector, so within the sporting sector. And the open survey, based on hundreds of responses from players, coaches and administrators within the Black, Asian and minority ethnic sports community from grassroots level upwards, found that 41% felt that they had fewer opportunities than someone from a white background to progress as a player in their sport, while 21% believed that they'd face barriers getting into senior positions in sport. So you can see from these stats that there is a lot of work to do, and there are a lot of issues within the sporting world. And so with that, I want my first question, I'm going to open it up to Jermaine and Maggie. And the first question is, well, it's not so much a question, but I just want you to tell us a little bit about you and your career within the sport and fitness world. So, I'll start with Jermaine since he's a minority.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'm Jermaine Akins. I started off, my first sport I remember playing was football. And it's a funny one because now I'm so active and so I love exercise and stuff, but back then I was about 11, 10, I wasn't. Complete opposite. Very chubby. I was a chubby kid. And I was kind of pushed into football. Didn't like the thought of running around, so I thought, right, I'm going to be a goalkeeper. Believe it or not, I was a goalkeeper. So I started off as a goalkeeper, just for a local team. It was actually my friend's dad that managed the team, a Black male. So I kind of got on well with him. Kind of had that connection with him. I did that, and then started to lose a little bit of weight. Then I switched positions, and then was a striker. I kind of again was kind of forced into that position, maybe because of my height, maybe because they just assumed that I was fast and I could score goals and stuff. But again, at that age, I wasn't great, I'm being honest. After that, I kind of fell upon training and exercise, so lifting weights. I started off at probably about 16, just in my friend's garage, just lifting weights. It was just bicep curls and bench press. That's all we do, bicep curls and bench press. And then started to get into it, started to join a local gym, and then found out that I can actually work in a gym and become a fitness instructor and become a personal trainer. And then from then did my research, went to college, went to university, picked up all my qualifications on the way. And then, yeah, managed to get into personal training, became a personal trainer. Like Leah said, Lauren said, sorry, I went to the University of Huddersfield, started off as a fitness instructor there, then became personal training, and then I did Girls Who Lift. So Girls Who Lift, for those that don't know, is just a girls lifting session, which involved heavy weights, compound exercises, so big exercises like squats, deadlifts, and stuff, and then yeah, lots of different things that girls would lift, really. So it wasn't just about the weights and lifting and exercise and stuff. It was about the social aspect of it as well, and the women building confidence enough to kind of go into the gym by themselves afterwards and pick up them weights and don't feel threatened by the big guys who are in the gym and stuff. They're just confident enough to do their own thing. So after that, after university, I moved on to work in a mental health unit. So I worked as a mental health fitness coach. So with that job, I was on the unit working with the inpatients, getting them into physical activity and exercise, trying to get them out of the beds, and taking them out of the unit if they've got the leave, taking them out, going out on walks, and doing various different classes with them. I was there for about 3 years. Went into working at Huddersfield Grammar School. Started off as a PE teaching assistant there. I was always into sports, so I thought this is the route I want to go down. So I worked at the school for a year, and then just recently moved on to Kirklees College. So at Kirklees College, I'm a health and wellbeing coordinator. So what I'm doing there is kind of running the gym, sorting out all the memberships, the class timetable, the budget, everything basically. I've only been there for about 4 weeks. I'm enjoying it for now, but yeah, that's where I am now.
Thanks, Jermaine. Maggie, if you'd like to tell us a bit about yourself and your career within the sport and fitness world.
Thank you, Leah. I will. Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for inviting me to join you today. Unlike Jermaine, I've been in this game a heck of a long time. From the introduction from Lauren, you'll hear that I served for 30 years as a police officer, so that kind of tells you that I'm in the mature period of my life. So when I first started, it was like most people. I was at school, at high school, and you just try all the sports. And I seem to have an aptitude for most sports because I would dabble in everything, as most people do when they're at school. But one of the things I did recognise was that I could actually jump and jump quite high. So during netball lessons, I was also one of the tallest. So I was put at one of the two ends, and anybody who's played netball who is tall will understand what I'm talking about. You either end up as the goal shooter or the goalkeeper. So maybe about the age of 11, 12, I'm playing goal shooter, and I couldn't shoot. It was evident I could not shoot at all, but I was really good at rebounding. So sorry if there's anybody who doesn't understand the game of netball, but I'm hoping that you have a little bit of a knowledge about it. So I was quickly and swiftly moved to the other end to be a defender. And to this day, that's where I've stayed, and that's my position that I love. So going through the school years, like every sport really, there's the opportunity to play representations for your district, for your county, for your region. And that's the progression that my netball career took. from about 13 or 14. I was playing for Kirklees. About the age of 15, it was recognised that I had some ability. And unfortunately, the local teams in Huddersfield didn't have like a performance or an elite structure. So the nearest team to me was Leeds. And that's where I went at 15, getting on trains, getting on buses across to Leeds and playing there. And to this day, that's where I stayed, you know, probably been at the club for 42 years now. And from there, trials again for the county, and I was very, very lucky. I class myself as lucky. Other people may say, well, it's not luck, it's about your ability. But I always feel it's luck and a blessing for me. So I moved into the county setup at 15, then moved into the regional setup at about 16, 17. And at that point, I was put forward for England trials. And on my first run out, I was successful in getting into the England squad at 17. Now, you see, to me, that was just another day out playing netball. But what was interesting was the fact that the majority of the players were from the south of the country. Nobody really knew where Yorkshire was. Nobody knew me. I didn't know them. And so for me, it was just a day out playing netball. And that was probably the easiest trial that I've ever had because I had no expectations. It was the years that then followed. Once you actually achieve that goal, it's maintaining that goal and staying in it. So, yeah, I played a couple of years as an under-18. I then moved into the under-21s and then into the full senior squad. And from, you know, my netball playing career internationally did span 13 years. I was lucky enough to go all over the world because that's one of the beauties of sport. That's what it can do for you. And represent my country at 3 World Championships and walked away with just about 72, I think it was. I'm sure I can get down to the archives to check, but I think I ended up with about 72 international caps as a senior. So I have been really, really lucky and blessed to have this wonderful life of playing. Step away then from playing and always was linked to my club, returned to my club, and they were short of a coach. Now, I didn't have any coaching qualifications. All I had was the experiences and the coaches that I'd worked with. So I would just go to training and I would spit out everything that I'd been taught. And that was my coaching experience. But then as the years continue to tick by and you know that time is coming when you have to hang your boots up, I thought, let's get some knowledge behind this. And so I did. I went away and did my coaching qualifications. And as a consequence of that, I then end up just coaching the senior squad, some of the junior squads. Enter then the introduction of Super League netball, but it wasn't called Super League at that time. It was done on a regional basis where every region in the country had a representative team. These teams were usually linked to the universities and sporting universities. So you've got Bath, you've got Manchester, I think we had Loughborough, those sorts of places, Northumbria. And the head coach needed a specialist defensive coach and asked me if I would be interested. Just another coaching gig, I thought. So, yeah, I'll have some of that. And it was called Yorkshire Jets. Now, that ran whilst I was there for about 4 years. And then they decided to try and professionalise the sport because also running were similar leagues in Australia and New Zealand. So there was this need and desire to professionalise the sport. And certain criteria has to be met to be one of these teams in this Super League franchise. Unfortunately, Yorkshire Jets fell short on a couple, so they had to drop out of the Super League setup. Approached by somebody that was running the Loughborough Super League setup, asked me if I would come in as a defensive coach. So I then spent time travelling up and down the motorway with Loughborough. And then 2 or 3 years later, we've managed to have conversations with one of the biggest, rugby teams in the world. Everybody, if you know rugby league, knows Leeds Rhinos, and they are known across the world. And after conversations with them, they decided, yeah, it's something that we really want to do. We have the male team, which is, you know, the number one team within the setup. But then they decided to diversify and now have, you know, physically disabled, learning difficulty. We have a women's Super League team, as in rugby, and they decided to bring another female sport in, which was netball. So that's where I sit now within the Leeds Rhinos with the Super League franchise as an assistant coach. And I've done that role now for the last 3-4 years.
Well, thank you, Maggie. So just a bit about myself. I started off in athletics from the age of 8, as Lauren said, and I always loved football, but it was that thing of only boys play football. So for a long time, probably until I went to university, it was athletics. And then when I went to university, it was that, oh, well, they've got a football team, so I'll join the football team. And I knew I could play football because I always used to play with my brother, and I come from a very competitive family. And it's that thing of, if you lost outside at the garages, it ruined your whole week, and we had to keep on playing until I won. So I joined the football team at university, won a few medals, trophies, whatever. It was great. Then I joined a proper team, and that was my first exposure to actual team football, and it was amazing. I just loved it. I wanted to play football all the time. I literally ate it, I slept it, I drank it, and everybody just thought I was obsessed. Everything was football. I actually wanted to be a sports writer, but that was another story. So then what happened was, during the summer, one summer, I didn't like the off season because it meant I didn't get to play football. And once the tournaments had all dried up, it was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with my life? So then my coach, because I really liked it and I understood the game, my coach said to me, why don't you go and set your level 2 badge? Now there's different levels. You've got level 1, level 2, UEFA B, UEFA A, pro license, and then a few others. Now, I didn't have to do level 1 because I played football, so I went to do level 2 and absolutely loved it. It was a week of learning. I was working with being taught by the head of the Arsenal Academy. Some of the football Fulham coaches came in. It was just amazing, and I had so much favour with the London FA, so they kind of like drafted me in for a few things here and there. Now, about 2 years later, there was funding going on in the league because they were trying to get more women in football. Now, my coach was quite savvy in that he wanted to have a player who had a UEFA B badge. So he just said to me, Leah, there's an opportunity for you to do your UEFA B badge. Would you like to do it? And I was like, I don't know, because I don't actually coach a team. But it was like, it doesn't matter. We'll work that out. So anyway, I went to do my UEFA B. That takes about 9 months to do. 9 months, I consumed myself in this because it was all I wanted. Like, I could fail at anything else, but I could not fail at football, not in coaching, not anything to do with football. That would really finish me off. That's how much I loved football. So I went to do my UEFA B. Within the class, there's 32 people, 30 men, 2 women, and the 2 women were Black women. And it's that thing of, oh my goodness, I am surrounded by men, and this is a man's world. And it was amazing. I absolutely loved it. I was literally in my element because I was like, do you know what? Anything you can do, I can do too. I mean, to be fair, the strength and everything was incredible, like comparing the women to the men. And I was just like, yeah, okay, so I'll just maximize what I can so that I can still play the games and go on with it. And I actually played with men much bigger than me, much stronger than me, but they really did include, a lot of them included me, and a lot of them were just like, she's a woman, like wouldn't pick me for their sessions and everything. And I was like, yeah, whatever. So I sat my UEFA B badge. I sat my exam. And the day that I sat my exam, my coach has said to me, at the end of the exam, you will know whether you've passed. You say to yourself, I've either smashed it or I haven't. And when I finished the session, I was like, I smashed that session. I knew I had smashed that session because I loved it. And one of the Fulham coaches said to me, that session was outstanding. And I was like, yay. So you have to wait all day until you get your results. It's one after the other. And I was one of the last. And when I went in, Mark, who was giving out the results, he was assessing me. He said, he went through my session and he was like, if you did that, you did this, you did this. I don't know what you said to this player, but whatever it was, it worked. If you'd just moved one more step, that's UEFA A level, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is so good. And he said, now, you did really well and you passed this. And what I want to say to you now is, do not let anyone tell you that you only passed this because, number one, you're a woman, and number two, you're black. It was like, you passed this because you deserve to pass it. I've watched you put in the work. I've watched you over the years, how you've developed, and you deserve this more than anyone. And I was like, amazing, because I didn't want to be a statistic. That was my main thing. I am not being a statistic in this. So from there, I was still playing football, so I wasn't coaching, but during that period, I was coaching quite a few different teams just so that I could get my hours in, so that I could learn. But also playing helps you as well, because I started off as a striker stroke winger, because you're fast and that's where you're always put. And then I had to fill in for someone as a right back, and from there, that was my position. I absolutely loved it because I read the game very well, and I could understand why a lot of managers were actually defenders, goalkeepers, or holding midfielders, because of how you're looking at the game. So that's pretty much my journey into it. From there, I've coached one girls team, the team that I played for, and then I moved into the guys section, which I absolutely loved, and would 100%, if any women's into football, I would encourage anyone to try both sides, both men and women, because there's so much to gain from it. For me, I've gained so much from it. I've learned so much from it, and I absolutely loved it. So that's my story, which moves me on to my next question, which is, and I'll start with you, Maggie, with this one. So why do you value sport so much? Why does it play such an important role in your life? And I guess, what does sport and fitness mean to you? You're on mute.
I'm going to take it right back to the very beginning, and I tell this tale to quite a few people. I suppose you would say that the environment that I grew up in was, socially economic deprived. That's what I would call it. And we didn't have much. And I am the eldest of four. And my mum was a widow at 34. So, like most black families, you were dragged to church every single week. And myself and my brothers didn't particularly enjoy church. But what we did enjoy was the fact that playing team sport and playing games were always on Saturdays and Sundays. So we were exceptionally lucky that our mum allowed us to play these sports, which then meant we missed church. And I think psychologically, thinking back, I think I knew I had to do well because that was my escape from going to church. Mm-hmm. So that in the first instance, that's what sport meant to me. It was an escape from something I didn't want to do. And then the other side of the coin is that, we grew up in a time where there wasn't much about, there wasn't much opportunities. And there were two choices, really. You either played sport or you probably went down the wrong path. And so many people, probably from the black community, have these challenges that they have a path that they tread, and one path takes you one way and one takes you the other. Because I'm probably 80% sure that if we, as in me and my brothers, didn't find sport, then the path would have been completely different. So it gave us an opportunity to be something and do something rather than walking the wrong side of that path, if that makes sense to people. The understanding and belief is that, most of us growing up in that, there were no opportunities for us, no doors open for us at that age. We were visibly, being black was a barrier, but it wasn't within sport. And that is what's moulded myself and my family, who have done exceptionally well, my brothers, in sport as well.
Amazing. Thank you. Jermaine?
So what does it mean to me? I think for me now, it's therapy for me. It helps me de-stress, makes me feel happy. it's basically everything. Really. It's my life. And similar to what Maggie said, when I was younger, again, it was just an escape from doing something that I shouldn't be doing. Because my grandma brought me up a lot. I used to stay at my grandma's a lot, and just behind my grandma. So I was brought up in Fartown. Many of you will know Fartown. So
Me too.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's good. So in Fartown, so me and my friends just used to go into the park on Abbey Road, and it was just a big field. And then a little park. We was a bit too old for the park for the swings and stuff, so we were literally just on the field. We had a football, and that was it. Football. We used to run back to the house to pick up 50 pence or something like that, just to get a bit of an ice cream or something. But
you had 50 pence.
50 pence. I felt like I was rich after that. I could go to the ice cream bar, pick up my screwball, my sprinkles.
Stop.
Yeah, yeah, and that's all I needed. So for me, sport, especially at that age, it kept me away from doing something I shouldn't. Because we used to see the older guys and they were all into badness and stuff, but we just had our football and that was it. So yeah, and then like I said, like now it's more therapy. It helps me out. Even when I'm kind of giving advice to people, giving information to people, it makes me feel better as well. It makes me feel good that I'm actually helping somebody else. So yeah, for me, it's everything. It's everything.
You see, Leah, it's interesting that Jermaine says that it's therapy for him. Sometimes I get so stressed with my girls, it's untrue.
Yeah.
As a coach, I absolutely adore all, because I'm an under 16 coach as well, and it's just that wonderful formative years, just before the stepping up into seniors, just getting them ready for that huge step up. And sometimes it can be so frustrating, but it's always rewarding.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I wouldn't call it therapy.
It's,
Team
it's,
sport.
it's because I don't deal with them youngers anymore. Really, it was stressful when I worked at the school, because I was dealing with like kids that were like 4 years old up
Yeah.
to 16, so I was getting a bit stressed there, but not that bad. It's not that bad.
Oh, but what I will say is we're at the beginning of our season, because it runs September through to like April or May. And what gives me the biggest joy every single season is taking this raw talent September time and bringing them through and developing them. So when it comes to April time, they walk out, better, not just better players, but better people.
Yeah.
Because you deal with them holistically as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that, Maggie, because so when I was playing, it was about expressing myself. It was that thing of, do you know what, when I'm on that football pitch, it's just about football and nothing else. What happens on the pitch stays on the pitch. The rest of the world is still spinning, but it stops on this football pitch. And I was always trying to better myself. So I'm very, I always have goals. I'm really goal driven. And it was that thing of working as a team, learning from those around me, learning how different skills and attributes together can become a formidable force. So when I taken that into coaching, and bearing in mind I was crossing both sides at the same time. When I was in coaching, it was teaching the players, because I took under 14s. First of all, I started with under 14 girls. I took them into senior level, and then I moved to under 14 boys and the same, and they crossed over as well. I was doing both at the same time. And it was teaching the players that everything that they learned here is transferable to their school, their working life. It was almost trying to set them up for the future. And for my what I was trying to get across to them was, it's not just football. It's that football mirrors life. So learn these principles early, and you'll be able to navigate life and become better people. And life can become easier if you know how to navigate certain principles. And just watching them, I always say it was almost watching them going from children to that step before adulthood. And it was just, it's like some of my boys went to university, and I was almost heartbroken when they were going, but I recognized that they were maturing, they were becoming men. The way they dealt with things was different to when I saw them at under 14 level, and that gave me so much pride. The girls, the guys, it was just like, wow, I was part of that, and I've managed to impact so much, impart so much into your lives. And I knew from what their parents said to me. One of the boys, he was my captain, absolutely loved this guy to bits, and he was leaving me after the second season. And I didn't want him to leave because it was almost like me on the football field. And his dad came to me and he said, since you came to this club, I've watched Josh growing from a boy to a man. And it was like, and that's because of you. You did that. And I was just like, the tears just started to come down. I was
Amazing.
just like, oh my goodness. And that in itself was just, that was everything to me, because it wasn't so much about, don't get me wrong, I'm all about accolades. Like, you're not playing. Someone said, it was within the boys section, they said it's all about the fun and the taking part, and I was like, whoever
No.
that is telling lies. In my team, yes, have fun, but you've got to, like, don't turn up to a game thinking, oh, I just want to have fun, I just want to take part. No, you're here for a reason. If you're in my team, you're here for a reason. And
Absolutely.
so for me, it's a life thing, it's a life skill, it's development. And yeah,
I understand exactly where you're coming from.
so that was just amazing. So I just have a question, and it was something that someone asked me a few years ago, and it really got me thinking. So when you were growing up, and even now, I suppose, who were your role models? And do you think that it's important to have Black role models within sport? When you were growing up, did you see yourself represented? So I guess, who were your role models? Did you have role models? Okay, Jermaine.
Yeah. So role models in sport, I'd say it was Ronaldo, the original Ronaldo.
Right.
Not Cristiano, the original Brazilian Ronaldo, and it was. I think I kind of looked up to the Brazilian team. They were like the ones that were doing great things. See, for me, when I was younger, the only sport I kind of was involved in and kind of knew was football. My dad didn't play any sports. My brother played football at a good age, but my brother's 20 years older than me. So when I kind of got into football, he was out of it and he moved to London and stuff. So I'd say he's my role model, but not in sport. So like I said, it was more the Ronaldos and stuff.
Yeah.
But there wasn't necessarily anybody that looked like me that I kind of thought, yeah, I want to be like this guy. I feel like now as I've got older, I'm kind of seeing the role models more now that look like me. And I think that's great because I've got a little boy who's 5 years old, and it's good for him to have a role model. Like, obviously, I'll be his role model as well, but another role model that's maybe a professional sports player or professional this or professional that. So I feel like now, currently, there's a lot more role models that do look like me. A lot more Black role models. But like I say, when I was growing up, not much, I'll be honest.
Yeah. What about you, Maggie?
Pretty much the same, really. There were no real role models within my sport. I didn't even look at it in that context when I was 15 or 16. What I do remember is being in awe of just female athletes, and that's across the board. So, the people like, these might be names people don't know, but Martina Navratilova, because I just thought she's just an amazing athlete, tennis player. And then obviously there was Denise Lewis. She's kind of like my era. She was just going out smashing records. So I don't honestly believe at that time I had any female role models. I just admired sport across the board in general.
Yeah. And I remember when someone asked me that a few years ago, I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't actually have a role model. My mother was my role model because she was hardworking. She taught us so much in life. But in terms of sports, I mean, I loved Linford Christie, but he was a man. I didn't aspire to be a man. So it was like, who exactly were my role models? There weren't any. In athletics, again, it was Linford Christie. Football, the way I picked my team was who had the most Black people. And that was, when I tell my friends that who are white, they're just like, that's a bit racist. And I'm like, no, it's how I identified, because I loved football as a young child, and like when I saw the first black player, I was like, oh my goodness, it's a black player. I remember
Yeah.
the World Cup. I think it was World Cup '94. Holland were playing. That was when I saw Ruud Gullit. I saw Rijkaard. Yeah, and I was like, oh my goodness, black players. Don't get me wrong, there's other teams, but this was a European team as well. But
It's,
I
it's
remember,
funny you said that actually, because my brother said the same thing. And my brother's an Arsenal fan.
yeah,
And he has been an Arsenal fan from the Invincibles. And I think that's because he said to me, because I asked him, like, why are you supporting Arsenal? Which team? He said, I supported Arsenal way back in the day because there's a team that had so many black people in it.
yeah.
So you had like your Paul Ince, not Paul Ince, sorry, Ian Wright,
Ian Wright.
Sol Campbell, all players like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they were his role models. So that's why he liked that team. So yeah, it's funny you said that actually, because I thought the same thing. I thought, how can you just say that? Like, just because it's got so many black people. Because I like Man United. But I mean, and there weren't many in that team. I
Yeah,
was
no.
like, why is a team like Arsenal? But as I've got older, I've kind of understood it,
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
like, yeah, that's great. I do get it now. Do you know what I mean?
But
Yeah,
growing up,
but what I will say to you is that within my sport now, the profile has gone from 0 to ridiculous, and the coverage and the accessibility
Yeah,
to these athletes, there are now role models
yeah, yeah,
for players coming through. So I think there's a lot has moved on, a lot has changed in our times
yeah,
that has made the accessibility and the profile of certain individuals, teams, players that have lofted them into these dizzy heights. And we now have, I have youngsters who do have those role models who they do identify with
yeah,
within my sport. But it's taken the changing of the game for that to
yeah,
happen.
yeah. When I was doing my when I finished my UAFB, I was offered a job by the London Football Foundation, because the guy who was the director was part of the London FA, and I was working with a girl called Tina Mapes. She's an ex-England international, and she's white, but I will say she's one of the first women that I've ever looked up to. The woman is incredible. She taught me so much, and she's so laid back about it. And it was that thing of, it was almost like she had a goal to improve me in the best way she could, and she did that. And I spoke to her about a few months ago, and I just said to her, no one has taught me so much in such a short space of time as you did in football. And she kind of like rubbished the statement, because she's very much like that. And I was like, no, you were actually amazing, and someone who I did look up to. And while she wasn't my role model within the football world, I really, really looked up to her and admired her for what she did. And she was very, very inclusive. There's some people that I've met in the football world who I would say, in terms of race and inclusion, they were so far ahead of their time. And like Mark Drabwell, London FA, he doesn't work with them anymore. Him and his dad, every time they stood up, they talked about race, they talked about black players, Asian players, and they made sure everything was inclusive. And it was just such an amazing thing to see, because they stepped out of the box. They did something that nobody else would do. And I respected them. That's why I'd like, to this day, still keep in touch with them, because they had such an impact on my life. And they showed me that, do you know what? If no one else will stand with you, we will stand with you. And I'll never forget those people because of that. And I just wish there were more black people within the sport. Don't get me wrong, it is getting more and more, but we're not where we need to be within football itself. So with regard to diversity and inclusion, why is that important to you guys? Yeah, it's important. Why is it important to you?
people feel represented.
Yeah, it is about representation. And I suppose the easiest one is that visible representation, isn't it? That's why it's important. I have to say, though, we're still not fully inclusive, and there are some barriers that are keeping people out. You know, I don't know whether my sport is still played in schools, every day like it was when I was at school. And if I give you this example, that last season was the first time that I have coached a Muslim girl.
Wow.
The first time ever.
Wow.
You know, and she was amazing. She was awesome. And when we went to games, there was that obvious stare because she would wear a hijab. She had to cover herself completely. And just the fact that people would double take, just shows us that we're still got such a long way to go, because it shouldn't be unusual, but it is to people.
Yeah.
And the discussion, as I overheard, wasn't about her ability, but was about who she was as a race of person, which was challenged, let me tell you. But in all my years of playing and in all my years of coaching, it's the first person that represents or identifies as Muslim that I've come into contact with or coached.
Yeah, and I guess the more you have, the more ethnicities you have within sport, the more more people will come into it. So, I mean, when I was playing, one of my friends used to come and watch me, and she said to me, Leah, do you realize you're the only black person in the league? And I didn't actually notice, because I grew up in Scotland, I was always in the minority. So coming to play, I didn't actually notice. But when I did play against, so it was generally cup games, I would come up against other black players, and that was when yes, recognition, like we are the same type thing. And it was that thing of, after the match, you would have a conversation with them, and it just felt so good. And some of my players would always say, do you know her, do you know this person? And I was like, no. And it was just that thing of, we're both black, we're in the minority, we're going to talk to one another. And I think that, if for me, that whole diversity and inclusion, the more diverse teams are, the better, because you're bringing in so many different aspects of people, and everyone has different attributes within any kind of setting, so it can only get better. And again, as I said, if you have more black people, if you have more Asian people, you're going to more and more people from those backgrounds will want to participate. But when there's very few, it's very difficult. I think for me, it was a lot easier for me because, as I said, I grew up in Scotland. I was always in the minority. So stepping into a football team that had no black people meant it wasn't a big deal to me, in terms of it was the norm. But I can see, talking to some of my other friends, it is not the norm for them, and they won't do it. Now, Maggie, you talked about barriers, so that just leads me to my next question. What do you think the biggest barriers to participation in sport for those from Black, African, Caribbean, Asian backgrounds? What do you think the greatest barriers are?
Number one has to be cost.
Yeah.
It is expensive to play sport,
Yeah.
and particularly for my sport, because it's in the main, it's indoors. So you have all the court costs, then you've got the coach's cost, then there's cost for kit. And as I explained to you before, there's a pathway to performance within the sport. So if you start at the grassroots level and you're just playing for your district, there's a cost there.
Yeah.
Then if you then progress on that pathway and you then go play for your county, there's a cost there on top of your district stuff. Then if you want to go and play within a performance pathway, which would be we have one at Leeds Rhinos, a performance pathway, there's another cost there. So you've got 3 steps, training 3 times, 4 times a week, maybe 5 times a week to cover all those teams. And there's a cost to each one.
Yeah.
The majority of it could probably cost a parent £1,000 a year in fees.
Wow.
That's not even thinking about the travel to and from. Can you, and that's another barrier. Do you have parents who have access to a vehicle that can get you there? So that's another barrier, as well as the cost. Buying kit, can you afford the kit? The sport I've seen has now gone from that being fully inclusive for everybody and anybody to being about, can you afford it? And
Yeah.
a lot of the a lot of the players that I have contact with go to private schools. And if they can afford to go to private school, then paying 3 sets of fees every single week, costing £1,000, plus, you know, £600 on top for kit, then all the travelling to get to these games and match fees on the day. I don't want to make a big generalisation and say that they can afford it, because I know there are some parents who go without to ensure that they can give their children the education that they need. But generalising, most can afford this. Now, I know, and I know through the work that I do with our Leeds Rhinos Foundation, that their tagline is just changing people's lives through sport.
Yeah.
And what they want to do is to get into the inner city schools where we know there is so much talent, so much raw talent within these schools. But unfortunately, a lot of this talent will never be tapped into because, number one, maybe their parents didn't play sport and don't understand it, don't get it. They don't have the time or the energy to take their children to where they need to go, because once you get on that merry-go-round, you know, there's a lot of expectation from the parents, and we need the parents to help us, so they don't want to do it or they don't get it or understand it.
Yeah.
Some of the children that we're talking about that could be talented have fractured homes. So, you know, they wouldn't even think of going back and telling the parents, oh, I've done really, really well. They're asking me to go and do this and that, because it's just a no from the start. So, yeah, there's many, 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 many barriers. And then there's the culture barriers as well. But that's the one thing that really upsets me, because sport can be fully inclusive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my particular sport, I don't come to you with any horror stories of my own, because my particular sport has been fully inclusive and continues to be, but there are those barriers to why we don't see a higher representation of people from, you know, from ethnic backgrounds. And there has to be some way that we can tap into that and help them, whether it's financially or emotionally.
Uh-huh. What about you, Jermaine?
I think Maggie's covered it all, really. I was going to say, literally, the first one is costs. The sport can be very expensive. With football, I'd say not so much, but with football, just going back, I still had to pay for the subs. So every week training, pay for your matches, pay for the kit, registration fees, get into football. Do you know what I mean? So it was expensive, and like, I live with my mum, but obviously my grandma as well. But they weren't bothered about the sport. They weren't bothered about me playing for a team or anything like that. As long as I was out of the house doing something, they wasn't bothered. So yeah, so it can be expensive, but yeah, if you've got somebody there who kind of can pay for these things and kind of push you in the right direction, maybe have done the sport before, it helps massively.
Yeah.
It helps massively. What I was going to say about the cultural barrier as well. Again, thinking about my own family, like I say, my mum wasn't bothered there. I feel like if she hasn't come and watched me train, hasn't come and watched me play. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying, oh, she's a bad mum for that. It just means she wasn't bothered, and that's completely fine. But I feel like if I had somebody there that was encouraging me to go, encouraging me to play for a good team, a better team, training, watching me, then maybe I could have progressed and maybe played for a better team.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is a cultural barrier there, definitely. I think that's number 2 after cost.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
100%.
I would definitely say the finances is a huge thing in football. If I didn't have a car, or if I didn't have someone before I had my car to pick me up, I was getting two tubes to get picked up, to drive 35 minutes to football. So in total it was like an hour and 45 minutes before I got my car. But how many of us actually have cars at that young age? And I got the car because one of my friend's parents was selling cars. It was a really old car and I didn't care. I loved it. It was called Alfie. That got me where I needed to go. And but when you look at it, I was paying like my last pair of football boots £150. who has £150 if you're from a broken family, or if your parents don't earn so much money? They're not going to give you £150, and you can't really go with like cheap football boots because A, they hurt your feet, B, you get laughed at, and C, you just get, they're too heavy. So you need to, money is a huge thing, and football was supposed to be the sport that everyone could play because it wasn't expensive, but it is expensive. But I think the barrier that, from my perspective, within the world of football, within the women's game, is definitely the misconception or the perceived perception of the playing environment with respect to the LGBTQ community. Now, what I mean by that is, one of the first questions I'm ever asked whenever people talk about football, or they know that I play football, is, are you gay? Isn't everyone gay? I'm like, what kind of question is that? And while I was in the minority as a straight woman, it was never an issue or a point of question as to whether I was going to be playing football or not. However, this would be a problem in many Black communities, because there's still such a stigma around it and a lot of negativity around this environment. So, and this isn't a blanket statement, because it's not true of all Black communities, but it's still a really big issue among some. So you could be the most talented player, but at the same time, you have parents who don't want you to be exposed to that environment, or they would rather protect you. And that comes from a lack of understanding. And for me, I'm someone asked questions. When I joined my first football team, one of the girls asked me, it was a few weeks later, she was like, Leah, we're all going out at the weekend, do you want to come? And I was like, yeah. They were like, we're going to a gay club, are you okay with that? And my question to her was, why are you going to a gay club? And like, I was the most innocent person in the world, and they were like, because most of the team are gay. And I was like, what? Are you serious? And they were like, okay, Leah, this is not okay. They were like, are you stupid or something? And I was like, well, how exactly am I supposed to know if people are gay or not? And they were like, they look gay. They're like, she started to go through them, and because they did have the short hair and everything, but I didn't equate that to you're gay or anything. I just equated that to, I'm playing in with a group of girls who are really cool, and I really, really like them. But I asked questions. So when I didn't understand things, I asked questions, and they appreciated that. Just like if you have questions about me, about my race or anything, ask me. Don't assume, because assumptions cause division, and that's what you see a lot of. That people don't understand the culture. People don't understand football. People have their assumptions, and they think, well, if I send my daughter to football, she's going to turn gay. And it's like, I can tell you now, no one's going to jump on you. You're not going to catch anything, and no one's going to turn you gay. It's just not a thing. But it's that lack of education and understanding, and that does stop a lot of people participating. And I know this from first-hand experience, from talking to people. I do have a lot of Black friends, and I do try and educate them in that. And if I see that they're talented, it's like, don't let someone's misconception stop you. Go and be who you're supposed to be, because at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to have regrets. And I will also say that diversity is key for growth. I mean, I've played with some of the most amazing minds. And through that, like, when I started playing football, I could happily meander through life. Seriously, like my sisters, my brother, they could all go and be high flyers, but I could meander through life. As long as I had my grades and I had my university degree, I had a job, and it was paying me really well. It was happy days. But when I actually met these girls were directors. They were high flyers, and they had an expectancy of themselves, and that, just iron sharpens iron. So being within that, I learned so much more about myself. I learned so much more about how to better myself. I learned so much more about the world, and I became more rounded. I've been exposed to things that I may not necessarily have been exposed to, and that was through football. That was through being within that environment. Different minds, different people, different backgrounds. And for me, I would just say, don't let things like that stop you, because everything's about growth, and everything it's about being inclusive, and it's about learning and developing. And you can't do that if you're in a little bubble on your own. Your world becomes too small, and you don't learn enough. You don't understand enough. So Yeah, I think that's one barrier for sure that needs
Yeah,
to be broken down.
I agree.
Okay, so are we finished with that topic?
I think we could go on and on
I
with that
know, I
topic.
know. Well, okay, so from the Tackling Racism and Racial Inequality in Sport Review 2021, it was conducted by Equality in Sport and the National Sports Council. Now, one of the key things that they talk about as a huge part of sport and fitness is getting to connect with like-minded people, build connections, and express yourself authentically. Can you tell us about your experience within this?
Gosh, expressing yourself authentically. I think I'm able to do that now, but that only comes with time and reputation and experience.
Yeah.
It's really tough when you're somebody that's just stepping into this world of sport, especially if you're a person of colour and if you are a female, to be taken seriously, if the
Yeah.
truth be known.
Yeah.
So you have to have a few of the factors backing you up to give you that credibility. Um, I suppose I do all right. I do all right with it now because I have that wool on my back, as they say in Yorkshire. I have the experience, but it was tough. It was tough.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine it must have been. What about you, Jermaine?
I think growing up, um, it for me it was hard to kind of be able to express myself and be who I wanted to be, especially in football, playing for a team where majority of the players are white, managers white, most teams you play against are white. Um, so for me it was hard because obviously being in the boys changing rooms and being on a football pitch you will experience the banter, the little comments here and there. But for me, it was like I had to kind of laugh it off because it didn't offend me because most of these people are my friends, but you couldn't really be yourself. And coming out of sport, actually, a story that just coming to my head actually, but like going into like workplaces, for example, and on your lunch break. Yeah, you know where I'm gonna get to. You know where I'm gonna get to, and it's like when I don't know, it's a Monday evening. Your mum's cooked you nice Sunday dinner, and your mum said take the leftovers to work on Sunday, on Monday, and you look at the food and you know it's nice. You know it's good. You got your rice and peas, you got your chicken, you got this, you got that. But it's like you know that you don't really want to bring that container of food into work because I know that's the food that you love. It's your culture. Your mum's made it. It's beautiful food, but you don't want the comments at work. You can't really enjoy that properly because you'll have people like, oh, what's that? Oh, that smells a bit funny. Oh, what's it? Do you know what I mean? So I have experienced that as well. So that just links me to the football as well. I couldn't necessarily be myself and who I wanted to be on a football pitch or in the changing rooms and stuff because I had to fit in.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I had to fit in, and if I was to say something that was something that I normally say around my friends or around my family, I'd be seen as kind of weird and strange and what are you doing, like typical black guy. Um, so yeah, but for now, I think I do express myself and I am how I am, and people love me for it. And if you don't, then you don't. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's their problem. Um, but when I was younger, I kind of felt like I had to fit in.
Yeah.
I
See,
had to fit in.
I think for me, because I started football later, I was at that stage where it was like if you were coming in my car, you're going to listen to my music. And my friends were like, "Oh, this is just so much noise," and I was
Yeah,
like, "Well, walk then," because I'm not
yeah,
listening to my music. And I liked people asking me questions about my hair or whatever because again, it stopped the assumptions. And but I mean there were comments that it was just like I mean I laugh when you see rice and peas because there was a point at football where we if you didn't have a proper clubhouse and we had a clubhouse but it didn't serve food, we had to take turns each and make things, and it was like the worst 2 weeks ever because you had to do it twice.
mhm,
And when one of my coaches used to always say, "So Leah, what are you going to make? Rice and peas, rice and peas."
Yeah.
And I just,
Yeah.
and everyone would be laughing. I'm the only black person there. And
Mm.
I just said to him every time, number one, you're so ignorant. And number two, I'm not West Indian. Because I was trying to make him see that, do you know what? There are different cultures within the
Yeah.
black
Yeah.
community. And then he would start going, lucky, 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 lucky. And then the rest of the team would start. And I just have to share to some of the players, and I'm just like, that is not okay. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, you're really, really ignorant. And when George Floyd died, one of my friends phoned me. She's still one of my really good friends. She phoned me, and actually, she phoned me, but then there's a few of us had dinner together, and she was like, I just want to apologize to you. And she was almost crying. And she said, because all those years when X used to say, I mean, no one's going to know who he is anyway, but Graham used to say all those things to you, I always wanted to say something, but I was too scared because like with what he would say, and I didn't want to lose my place in the team, because everything comes down to, you don't want to lose your place in the team. And she was like, and I don't like talking about it because it tears me up, the fact that I let you sit there and let everyone laughed and blah blah blah. And I was like, I really appreciate it, but at the time I really could have done with some backup, because it's like, I thank God for my family, because see, if something happens, they're the ones that I go to, because they've walked this life. We grew up in Scotland. There's not a single name you could call me that I didn't hear before the age of 10 years old. There's not a single thing that's happened that didn't happen to me. So stories, things that happen, it's almost like water off a duck's back at the time, but it does get in there. And it's that thing of, if something happens, they're the ones that I call, because I can't trust that people will stand up for me. And it's not against them, because I've got some really good people around me, but when the rubber hits the road and I have to I'm standing out for the wrong reasons, who's going to stand with me? No one.
No, and I think that I again say that I'm pretty lucky within my sport, because I don't see that, I don't feel that, I've never experienced that. I still bang on about it being as inclusive as it possibly can be as a sport. Everything you've just said there, though, Leah, I have experienced within my working career as a police officer.
Wow. Yeah.
And more. Yeah, from colleagues, because I joined the service in a time when there were very few women, and I think I was probably the second, third black female, within West Yorkshire Police. So I absolutely feel every word you just said there, and triple it right at the beginning of it all, until you sort of grow your own wings and you learn to stand up for yourself. And for as much as people say that they will stand up for you and they will say something, it's getting better, but because of the possible consequences to them as an individual, they just don't.
Yeah.
They just don't.
Yeah. And that's the harsh reality, and I think people don't quite get that as well. But I guess, well, how can we improve the experiences of Black, Asian, and other minoritized ethnicities within sport? What can we do?
Oh gosh, there's been so many initiatives, and
I know.
so many, and I don't know the stats or the data to back up what the results have been. I know that you've attached something to this for us to read, but you can't bring what's that saying? You can't bring the horse to water, or something like that. If people just don't want to do it, they just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And and I don't want that to sound harsh, because I would love to see, more so individuals from the Asian community, because the Black community is well represented within netball. The people of mixed parentage, that is well represented within netball.
Yeah.
And then it's just the individuals that come from an Asian background are not. Is that just a simple thing that they just don't want to play the sport? They're not interested? Or is it something deeper than that? And even if we had a governing body that was prepared to put their hand in their pocket and provide funds to make sure that everybody could access the sport, at least at the bottom level, I still don't know whether we could do anything about getting more people I just don't, because people have tried and tried and tried.
Yeah.
And other than going and, going into schools, having a minibus that picks these kids up, that then takes them to some sort of court, give them the experience, take them back, and do that on a regular basis. It's just not going to happen. And I wish I knew the answer. I really do. I think it has got better. It really has got better. And I know it's geographical as well, because depending upon where you live will be the representation of the teams. So sometimes geographically, if it's predominantly, white people, then it's because that will be what the team looks like. And I know for a fact that, there are teams in Huddersfield that are just all black, because geographically where these people live or come from, that's where, the makeup of the team. Are we wanting to get these teams that are so balanced that we've got 4 that are black and 4 that are white, and 3 that are a bit of the other? Would that be a perfect world? I don't know, because I'm still a great believer in it's got to be on your ability, not on the colour of your skin. So, but again, I think I'm coming from a really easy sport where everybody that wants to play is well represented. If you look at the national team who are playing out in Australia at the moment, there's probably nearly probably 40-60 or 45-55 split of people of colour as against people who are white. So has the national team got it just right? And even the next string that are coming through as the future Roses, there's a lovely, beautiful mix of people of colour and people who are white. So my sport, at least at the elite performance level, seem to have it right. And these girls are playing. They're not just making up numbers and sitting on the bench. They're actually physically playing as well. So there's no tokenism there.
So I do think that people do have to want to play as well.
They do.
So we can, because there's no point in having all these. We did. So when I was doing my female coach mentoring, it was that thing of you have to want to do it. Don't just come to make up numbers. Actually have that passion, that drive. And I think, so it leads me on to my next question. I'm sorry, I'll bring you back in, Jermaine, but this covers it as well. So do you believe that education and research within schools and universities have the power to be able to inspire and engage more people from Black, Asian, minority ethnic backgrounds to be involved within sport and activity? And I say that because when I worked in London, so I worked for the NHS, and one of the CCG, the leads of the CCG, he was Asian. Now, he knew what his people wanted and his people, needed. He knew what they needed because there's a high prevalence of diabetes, etc. So what he did was, knowing that from a cultural perspective, you have a group of Asian women who can't do exercise with men. So he set up all these classes for Asian women, and it made such a difference. He set up certain things for them, and that was our way of thinking, was start that at a younger age, get all these principles in early, then as you get older things are going to change. So at schools, I went to a school where sport was everything. You had sports day, it was everything. So you're learning young, and if we have that, because I know a lot of money was taken out of the funding for sporting activities, etc., but if you're learning young, it almost becomes a habit and it's something that you're used to doing. So I do think that schools particularly could play a role in that. Universities, I'm not so sure how that would work, but I think there's always a place for it, because you could have, like, let's say, indoor sports at a certain time for like aiming at certain people, if you like. But they're just my thoughts on it from my experience. But what about you guys?
Yeah,
I think, sorry, Jermaine, go ahead.
I was going to say, I agree massively. As like me working in the college now, I kind of arranged for the college to run girls only sessions, especially to target the kind of the Muslim community, the Muslim females, especially because they can't train with the males. And then we've got girls only football sessions, but then we've got mixed sessions. We've got things of different timings to kind of target various different groups. So we're just trying to make sure that nobody misses out and nobody has that opportunity to say, oh, well, we can't do it because of this thing, or it's on at this time, or because we can't mix. Do you know what I mean? We've kind of opened it up for everybody, so everybody can get involved, because it is important that we give them the opportunity to play and want to do something that they enjoy.
Yeah.
So, and obviously that's going to help in the long run as well, because I think it was you, Maggie, that said there are so many kids who are very, very talented, and it's just finding them and kind of showing them that they are talented and they can do it. And maybe if, say, they've got that barrier from home or from the family friends, if somebody like a coach or an instructor or a trainer kind of tells the parents or tells the family that, listen, your child is actually very talented and can go somewhere. We've watched them and we've trained with them for so long. This is what they can do. Maybe that might change their thinking. So I think firstly we need to just think about kind of giving everybody that opportunity, to play, whether it's early mornings, giving them a specific time, giving them I don't know, anything, working it around prayer time, something.
Jermaine, I think it's commendable. I think it's absolutely commendable what you're doing, and offering those opportunities to certain groups of females who wouldn't probably have access. I suppose my question would be that it's all about choice, and what's participation levels like? Do you get plenty of people attending?
I'll be honest, not much, but I think it's because it's a college as well. I think, especially at that age, that college age, girls especially might not want to train at college because there's a chance that they might see a boy who they fancy, or they don't want to go to a class and be a little bit sweaty or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
They're all factors.
Yeah, of course. Because I remember when I was at college, I was walking around with my Lynx Africa and making sure I wasn't spraying it. Do you know what I mean? Make sure I smelled nice. But yeah, so there is them kind of things that you need to think about as well. So at the moment in time, it's not busy. I'll be honest, it's not busy. But then going back to when I was working at the university, and then there was the girls who live session, it was busy. And again, we just targeted females as a whole. It wasn't females, it was a black female. It was just females as a whole. And it was busy. The times worked perfectly. Do you know what I mean? Females were talking about it, so like a lot of more females were coming. I think that worked, and again, that's just giving them the opportunity to train in a safe environment where they don't feel like they're going to be judged. And I wanted to do it again at the college where it's just like girls only, but then I had somebody saying, "Oh well, if you do girls only, it doesn't have to be a girl trainer." But then it's like, yeah, I suppose so. But what we can do is just see how it goes. If we get comments from females who say, "Oh, we only want a female," then fair enough. That's fine. We can bring somebody in. But again, it's just giving them an opportunity, showing the females that we are looking out for them and giving them the chance to come down and use it. And if it means me stepping out or whatever, then so be it.
I think the main message is that you have opened the door and you've created an opportunity. And do you know what, Jermaine? If only one person walks through that door and you change their life through sport, then it's a win. And a lot of it as well. I mean, I've not looked into this in any depth, but I do know for a fact that whilst you have no choice, whilst you're at school in education up to, let's say, what, year 11 or 13, when you have no choice, then you have a huge number of females participating, and it's across the board because you're at school, you have to do. It's that drop-off point between leaving school and if you've not taken it seriously, which would mean you would have joined a club of some description before leaving school, and then going to sixth form or then going on to university. So you've got that period between 16 and 18, which I think is the critical period for particularly females in sport. You may tell me different for males in sport, regardless of your colour. That drop off there, it's capturing them before that point.
Yeah.
Because once choice comes into it, then you will lose a heck of a lot of participation.
Of course,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think also culturally, just
Yeah,
people understanding that
yeah.
there's so much more to sport. There's such a development tool. I mean, when I was in London, there was a church that I used to go to. We had directors and CEOs coming because they used to do these like open days to teach you how to present yourself when you're doing your CVs, when you're going for interviews. And one thing that one of the ladies said, she was a CEO of a bank, and and I never forgot it. She said, what we're looking for the people that stand out, the people who do sports, because when we see that you do sports, if you're an athlete, that tells us that you're disciplined, you're willing to wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning to do what you have to do. I was training like sometimes twice a day, just to keep so that I had that right fitness level, etc. And she was like, it tells us a lot about you. You said you could have a first class or you could have a 2-2, and that person that's got a 2-2, they're the athlete, they're the ones who are disciplined, who have committed to something. That tells us we want that person because they're a committed person. So it's almost trying to get that message across to parents from different cultures, the Asian, the Black, to help them to understand that it's more to just playing. There's so much more to it, and just by letting your child participate, they would see a difference. But
I'll also throw in there, Leah, that having spoken to some youngsters, as I've got older, and then you're able to talk to them, they'll tell you straight that their parents, depending upon what culture you come from, do not see sport as a way of earning a living.
Yeah.
It is just something that you do for fun. Well, fun time is over. It's time to settle down, go to university, go study, get a job. No. And there's another barrier that, that if you can't, you can balance both, as you've just explained. You can balance both. You have to have some outlet from education and from employment. And what better outlet than sport?
Yeah.
This is what I say. So, we have, doctors who play within my sport, within my team, who are able to, work in A&E at the front line of emergency care, and also play for a Super League franchise, travelling up and down the country, playing games, on Sky on Sunday, back in A&E on Monday.
Yeah.
So you can do the two, but unfortunately, certain demographics or parents do not see it as something worthy of their child's time. So that's also another barrier that keeps them out.
It's just a never ending. Well, do you know what? Progress will be made. Progress
Oh,
is
it is
made,
happening.
and it
It's
will
happening.
be. Yeah.
It is happening.
Right, do you know what? I'm actually really quite conscious about time. Lauren has told me not to worry about it, but I'm going to move on to the next question. And this is like one of my favourite questions. So, what has been the highlight of your career so far?
Ooh.
I have 3 because I couldn't limit it to 2.
Oh, that's so greedy, Leah.
I know, right? But I was like, I have to say it, right? So, do you know what? Since I know mine, I'm going to
go for it. Go
right.
for it.
So, 2015, 2016, I was coaching my boys' team. That was the season that Leicester City won the league against all the odds. No one expected them to win it. Anyway, my team sitting 4th in the league, and we had the last game of the season. We had to play this game. Anyway, everyone else had played except us and the team that we were playing. They were top of the league, hadn't beaten them all season. On the day of the game, I turned up, and throughout the week, I'd been like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to change the formation because they've beaten us every time. I know their players. Unless we change the system, it's not going to work. So I changed it to 4-5-1. We've never played it before, but I knew the players that I had, and I knew those boys would run through a brick wall for me. Anyway, turn up to the game, and we only have 12 players. I have a squad of about 16. I need subs. Anyway, they've gone on holiday, so that's by the by. Can't do anything about it. First 10 minutes, we go 1-0 up. And I was like, oh my goodness, guys, remember what I've told you. Just sit. This team broke our defensive line about 5 times, 1-on-1 with the keeper. I've no idea how they did not score. I always say it was only God because they should have scored. Anyway, if we drew the game, we would finish in 4th position. obviously lose the game, we stay in the same position, but if we win the game, we win the league by 1 point. Anyway, we won the game, and that was one of the best experiences of my life, seeing the way those boys reacted to a new change, something that I'd asked them to do. To a man, they all stood up. They were all dead on their feet at the end of the game. But that's one of my proudest moments. Second one was getting my UFAB badge. That was just amazing. And my last one was winning the league with my team and going into the Premier League, because that was like, my old coach told me it would never happen. I could never play at a higher level, and X, Y, and Z. And that was the fire. That was a fire in my belly. I'm going to prove you wrong. And we got there. His wife had played for the team a few years before. They were a league below that. Never won the league. I moved there. We won the league. We undefeated and got into the Premier League. So they were mine.
Ooh.
Do you want to go, Maggie?
Oh, I'll go with one working but relates to sport and one actual sport. And I think it has to be my first England cap. That's the one that sticks out above everything else. The feeling of pride and honour, and that choked up, tight feeling in my chest that I cannot believe that I'm here doing something that I love. I just can't believe it. And singing the national anthem for the first time. So that's me as an individual. And then the other big sporting memory moment was being one of 12 people to work with my security background at the 2012 Olympics. And I was let's put it this way, I was in charge on the day of that magic Saturday, on the 4th of August, which is also my birthday, when it was Kelly Holmes and Linford Christie and Mo Farah all did that magic, and I was there in that stadium on that day to witness that on my birthday. So that was just another magical moment. So that's it. That's
amazing.
No, brilliant. For me, I'm gonna completely spin it, because I haven't played for a professional football team or any kind of sports team. So for me, highlight of my career was actually seeing my son play, because I play with him all the time and I teach him different things. Obviously, as a personal trainer, you're kind of pushing your children into exercise and fitness and stuff and sports. So I take him to training and stuff, and he played, and he actually won man of the match, and he got given a trophy. So and I remember the morning of that day, he was saying, "Dad, I don't want to go to football today. My knees are hurting." A typical football dads, hello, these are not hurting. You're just being lazy. Come on, you need to go. You need to go. You need to play. You need to do some form of exercise. You can't just sit on your bum all day playing Nintendo Switch. I said, yeah, you do. I said, hello, you're very good. You need to play. Your friends are missing you. You can score loads of goals. I would just kind of boosting him up. Anyway, he ends up going, playing very well, scored 3 goals and won the trophy. So for me, that's like a massive highlight.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Nice.
Yeah, so that made me feel great, amazing.
Yeah.
Leah, go on, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, can I just correct myself? It was Jessica Ennis-Hill. I think I said Kelly Holmes. It was Jess Ennis. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, those heartwarming moments, because I've got a daughter. You just can't. You cannot put a price. It's priceless.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful. And then another one for me is kind of getting my level 3 personal training qualification, really. And yeah, getting my first personal training job, getting my first clients. Do you know what I mean? For me, that was massive, because once I got my qualification, it was like, right, how can I actually make money from this now? Do you know what I mean? And I mean, comparing myself to other personal trainers in the area who have been established for years and are doing this and doing that. They've got their clients there. They've got their social media and stuff. It's like, right, how can I do this now? So once I did get myself out there and I started training and started to look good and started to get on my social media, then it was like, right, my clients started to come in and that was amazing for me. From that first day when I got my first client, it was in Home Firth actually. I was client in Home Firth. From then it was like, right, I can actually make some money from this and actually enjoy this. Now how can I get my next client? Do you know what I mean? And we just got the ball running from there really. So yeah, they're two of my highlights there.
Amazing. So that obviously leads me on to the next question. What would, if you were to give your younger self advice, what would it be?
Be yourself and just be yourself and don't watch nobody, basically. Yeah. And that's how I would say it as well. Like, don't watch anybody. Don't let people kind of make you do what you don't want to do or think that you should be doing something else. When if you have a feeling inside and you want to do it and you feel passionate about it, go for it. Don't worry about the comments. Don't worry about the laughs, the banter, the this, the that. Just go for it. Because that's something that I should have realized a lot earlier in my life. So yeah, and that's what I tell my son as well. I tell him from early for him to just be himself and do what he wants to do. If he's interested in something, like my son, for example, is interested in like science and science experiments and stuff like that. For me, that was not my thing when I was younger. But I said, if you enjoy it, that's great. I'll make sure that I do buy you things for you to practice with. I do read science books with him and stuff like that. So yeah, just doing something you enjoy and being passionate about it, and yeah, don't watch nobody.
Yeah, and it'd probably be just be your authentic self and know that every opportunity is an experience, and experiences give you learning.
Yeah. I would probably say mine would be celebrate the wins. That's one thing I didn't do as I was working my way through football. I never celebrated the wins, and it was because I always had a coach in my ear tell me that I wasn't good enough. And when someone keeps telling you the same thing over and over and over again, you start to believe it. So all the trophies that I won, did not celebrate them, and that is a great regret of mine. And it was actually my sisters that was like, you never celebrate your wins, you need to start celebrating your wins. And I wish they'd told me that a lot earlier, because then I probably would have. But I have a whole lot of trophies that just didn't mean enough to me because of that coach in that year. And people always ask me, why did you not leave? And I was like, well, when someone tells you that you're not good enough to play at a higher level, you don't think you can actually leave. You think that this is it for you. And to be fair, I also got my UEFA B badge under him as well. So as much of a narcissist he was, I got something out of that. And I did move up there. And those wins I did celebrate, but the ones before I didn't. And you've got to celebrate every stage because that's an achievement. You've done something. So yeah, celebrate the wins.
Yeah, love it.
Okay, so I'm just going to read one excerpt from Tackling Racism and Racial Inequality in Sports, Sport Review 2021. So it says, Black, Asian and ethnically diverse women told us that navigating this space is emotionally draining. The images, the stereotypes of women the images and stereotypes of women interchange but are always observed as negatives. Women are seen as aggressive, defiant participants, or with ultra-human Amazonian qualities, or timid, oppressed victims reluctant to integrate. So my last question before I hand over to Lauren is around those wider barriers. Have you come across these wider barriers, or what do you have an understanding of this excerpt and where they're coming from? Because I know from my perspective, from football, people used to always be like, oh my goodness, Leah, you're so hench, you're this, you're that. And I was like, okay, do you know what? I have muscle, but I am not hench. And I don't like being called hench. But it was just the fact that my friends could go to the gym for 10 years and they still wouldn't look any different. I could go to the gym for 2 weeks and my muscle would pop out. And I was like, and I like my muscles because I like that athletic builds, etc. But it was that thing of people. One of the girls, when she came to football, she said, when I first came to football, the very first day, I was petrified of you. And I was like, well, because see if there's a joke going on at football, you can guarantee I'm in the centre of that somewhere. And I was like, why? And she was like, because you just look so serious. And that's a thing. It's like, if you're not smiling, because my resting face is it's serious. When it's business, I'm serious. Anything else, I'll be messing about. But it's just that perception, and she didn't get that from just seeing me. She got that from what she's heard in the media, that black people can be tough. And when it came to like one of the girls with my first team, she was like, Leah, if I get into a fight, you're jumping in. No, I'm not. I am not jumping into any fight because I don't fight, because there's no need for us to fight. And it's that thing of Leah will always have your back. No, you've got the wrong person. And it was just because I was strong. I was obviously that perception of black people are strong, they can fight, blah 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 blah. Couldn't stand it. It was just so irritating. And so I get where this is coming from. And it's, again, it comes down to a lack of education as far as I'm concerned, and lack of understanding. So what about you guys? Have you had any experience of that? Or
Do you know, I think subconsciously, way back when I was a junior, starting in my international career, I probably have had those fears and worries of the seniors, because they're up on this pedestal and, you know, they're almost untouchable because they are seniors and you are a junior. Thankfully, over the years, lots and lots of work. And I think, like you say, you know, there's this stereotype about black people being, you know, tough and rough and, you know, and we do have great muscle definition and it feels like with hardly any work. Well, we know it takes a lot of work. You know, it doesn't just happen. And I think that's got something to do with genetics as well. But, you know, moving all that aside, we've done quite a lot of work within our club to break down those barriers, because it's about education and it's about being open and honest and having the conversation. And sometimes the honesty bit is the difficult bit, because I know when we talk to our players about, we do performance plans for them, individual performance plans. And one of the things that always comes out is, listen, I can take it. You know, I just need you to be open and honest with me, you know, and just tell me, you know, if I'm just not doing it, just tell me I can take it. Well, the reality is, sport or not sport, nobody wants to hear the honest truth about you. But the reality is that the only way you can move on and develop is to be honest.
Yeah.
But you can always sprinkle a little bit of sugar on the top of it so that it's not an assassination. You know, you can still make your point without killing these people. So it's conversation, it's communication, and it's people being prepared to be honest and open their hearts and tell people what they like, what they don't like. And I'm talking about in the sporting arena, within a team environment. You have to be open and honest. If you want to grow as that group of individuals, and you want to be world beaters and you want to take on the best, even if you're the underdog, sometimes it's not about the outcome, it's about the process. And and this is what we say to our girls. So yes, they're all in the gym. They all have programs that they have to do, because we've got a really good team, sports science team around us. So these girls know that they have to get in that gym and they have to lift weights and they have to push weights. It's as simple as. And you will look at the end of the season where the definition of one as opposed to the other is nowhere near the same, but they can do it. Would I like a team of really strong Amazonian, athletic, mobile players? Yeah, of course I would. Of course I would. But that's not the reality. Everybody offers something different positionally, and that's what we're trying to get this balanced group. But just bringing it in, communication and honesty.
Yeah. What about you, Jermaine?
Yeah, I've experienced the stereotypes as well. Like, one kind of memory that sticks out is when I was playing football. I think it was in Dewsbury, against a team around the area, and people on the sideline was like, oh, "Look how big he is! Stay on him. He looks fast. Make sure somebody fast on him." And at that age, I didn't really think anything of it, because I thought, yeah, of course I'm fast. Like, these guys are saying something good about me. Like, they think I'm big, so they must be intimidated. But now when I think back to it, I think they're just racial stereotypes out there. Do you know what I mean? Just racial stereotypes. And that game in particular got very heated. There was a lot of slide tackles and there was a lot of abuse coming from both teams. But I remember, and this is probably the only time when I've actually had any sort of racial kind of comments sent to me directly. And I heard people on sideline do like monkey noises and stuff. And so when I had the ball, it was like, right, I'm going to show you that I am a really good player. Now I'm going to make your players look silly because I knew obviously they're targeting the monkey noises at me. I was the only black person in the team. And I felt like that was their only way of getting to me.
Yeah.
So when I had the ball, I was trying to do everything. I was step overs, I was doing aeroplane spins, I was trying to do everything just to make their players look silly. And there was one defender, and he was like, "Watch, I'm gonna break your legs. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that." In my ear, and I just got annoyed. I had the people on the sideline doing monkey noises, telling the players to break my legs and do this and do that to me. And then I had this defender in my ear as well. So what I did was I got the ball, and I wasn't even thinking about passing or doing anything. I just kicked the ball directly at him. And I shouldn't have, and I still regret it. No, but maybe I should have done something a little bit different. But I just got the ball and I kicked it straight at him. After that, it was like he just saw red. But I felt like I needed to do that to show you that I'm not taking this abuse. So yeah, that's kind of the only time I've kind of had racial abuse, really. But I've had the stereotypes growing up, like, oh, his hench, he must have been going gym for years, and is this, he can lift 100 kilograms. So I mean, even now when I'm in the gym, like when I'm working, and we've got like the 30-kilogram dumbbells, and I do that little induction for the kids and stuff, and I say, right, the dumbbells range from 2 kilograms all the way up to 30. So I said, right, try these twos. Like, oh yeah, cool. And they're like, Jermaine, I bet you could do 100 of them 30s. To me, and I'm like, no, not really. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, it to them, it's innocent. Do you know what I mean? It is innocent, and I don't take offense. But yeah, I get it all the time. I get it all the time.
Well, I think throughout all of this, one thing that we can all agree with is that communication and education is key, as well as
from an early stage, I'd say.
Yeah, as well as that people wanting to participate and stepping out of that box in order to achieve different things and learn different things. So the last question, which we've answered within it, but I want to hand it over to Lauren. And before I hand it over to Lauren, because she's going to answer this question, the question is, what questions and considerations can coaches, sports clubs, teammates, sporting governing bodies and allies ask themselves when it comes to challenging inequality and improving access to participation? And I would say that one thing that I do before at the end of my sessions, or even at the end of the day, because I take this into teaching as well, is what difference have I made today? What have I done to help someone to achieve something greater? I don't know if you guys have anything that you want to add to that.
I don't think maybe in my subconscious, because I always reflect after every session. So I don't know but I don't, and I'll always speak to my youngsters and just reinforce that they understood what the session was. What have you learned today? Why did we do this? What would you do next time? That sort of thing, that sort of thing. But other than that, as governing bodies and whatever, they know what they need to do. We all know that they know what they need to do. And they play lip service to most of it. If I give you a very quick example, right now, there's the governing body of netball in Australia, who were offered £15 million over a couple of years because Netball Australia is struggling a little bit. It's a great deal, an awesome deal, for female sport, giving you 15 million. The problem is that one individual on that national team is Indigenous. And this company this conglomerate that we're offering the money have bad history with the Indigenous people of Australia. And this player stood by and said, I know it's a lot of money, and I know it's about the bigger picture, but I can't be on board with that because of what's happened with my people in the past and what continues to happen to them, you know, in the future. And the governing body, I thought, oh, it's wonderful. The governing body have said, we're not going to put up with this. We're going to stand by our player, blah, blah, blah. Apparently, it wasn't the governing body. It was the company themselves that said, listen, it's getting a little bit hot, is this? We'll step away. So the governing body were prepared to take this money because they knew it was the bigger picture. It would give them longevity going forward, you know, for all the programmes, everything they want to do, not over their national team player. So we've come a long way. But in 2022, we've still got these issues which are bubbling right now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, people know what they need to do. And, yeah, even my own governing body, you know, if you watch any national team game, the girls will always take the knee, you know, as in their stand against racism within the sport. Always do it. And it started with just about every country doing it. Now it's tired. We did that. We're not doing that anymore. But England still do that. So I'm really proud of them. But there's still a long way to go. But people know. Leah, people know what they need to do.
I know. That's a sad thing. What about you, Jermaine? Anything?
Yeah, I say agree with both of you. Really, they need to know. They know that they should do it, but they just don't wanna.
Yeah.
They just don't wanna. But I feel like we as a whole, we're kind of doing the right thing, and we keep pushing. We keep pushing.
Yeah. That's all we can do.
And that's all we can do.
Yeah, so before I hand over to Lauren, I just want to say a massive thank you to Lauren, because over the past 2 weeks, I've been talking to Lauren constantly. And Lauren is someone, the first time I met her and Raf, now Raf was the voice inclusion and campaigns manager. That job no longer exists, sadly. When they both approached me, all I saw was fire. And I was like, you two people are willing to step out your box to stand alone, essentially, in a world where you don't have many people standing with you, let's be honest. But that fire in both of them, and particularly Lauren, because I only met Raf that first session, but I met Raf in a different session. She was the one who was like, we're going to get Leah on board. You two blew me away. You just blew me away. And all I can say is thank you, because you've stepped out. You have pushed. I saw Lauren last week. She was so upset because she didn't get as much support as she wanted to. My heart was just breaking for her. And I was like, you know what? You have tried. The amount of work she has put in to try and get more and more people on board to really sell Black History Month. I have never met anyone who has done more, who's not Black. And I'm not going to lie, you've probably done more than a lot of Black people have done. So Lauren, on behalf of myself, the team, the Black community, thank you so much. And also to Raf. And I know Raf, you're on here, and I'm absolutely gutted that you're not in your role anymore, because what you did as well, very few people have done that. And all I can say is don't let that fire burn, because it's going to be hard. Life is hard. Things are hard. But see, when you're willing to step out, you will always reap your rewards. So Absolutely. Keep going, and thank you so much. And I'm just going to pass that last question to you. Don't cry, Lauren.
I know that was sprung on me. I'm like, I'm tearing up here. Honestly, it's been amazing. Thank you all so much. I'm blown away how well it's gone, and we have gone over. I'm sorry about that, but I was not about to interrupt these conversations. So yeah, I mean, I guess to answer that question, you know, I don't play sport, but I think, you know, from my point of view and my job and my role, like, I guess most important thing is just speak to your staff, you know, speak to students, speak to people. Like, I think Leah mentioned this, like, she is not afraid to answer a question. She appreciates when people ask questions, you know, because half the time I think organisations think, you know, nothing's going on because they're not directly getting the reports. Stuff is happening, improvements can always be made, you know, and sometimes you do have to seek out those responses. You know, this is why our networks are so important, you know, feeding stuff back to this. So yeah, I was going to pose this question, I guess, to people, any supporting professionals, anyone who plays on teams, any coaches who are here today. But I mean, I'll leave that question for you to take with you, I guess, and think about beyond this. But yeah, we do have a couple more questions I'm going to try and rush through. And I think Raf did ask a question that you have answered about what can national governing bodies do. So I think we have covered that. You know, they know what they need to do. But Bernice asked kind of a wider question around that, and people who are in these positions of power, and said, you know, what do the panel think about representation in more senior roles in sport, and representation of black managers in football and sports boards. Is that representation there? What can be done? I don't know if you want to have a crack at that, Maggie.
Do you know what, the percentage of coaches or people in positions that are decision makers is very, very small within the black and minority community. It's really small. So we're talking about just the athletes themselves and people participating. We need to do some work on getting people through coaching qualifications, or, there's lots of black people in management who don't have to have a sporting background to be on a board for a sporting entity, if that makes sense, because they bring lots of other skills to the table. We've had chief executives of my sport who don't come from sport as a practitioner, but have an understanding of business or have an understanding of a different sport, and they just transfer it across. Now, I had the opportunity to be the head coach where I am now. And there's lots and lots of factors behind it that made me decide I didn't want it. And I'll be the first person to say that, that I doubted my own ability. I think the term is imposter syndrome. That's another one that gets thrown in there, because you don't think you're as good as you are, and it doesn't matter how much people tell you can do this, you don't believe you can do it. And I decided that I knew my qualities were best used at that spot just below the head coach, to be the support up and support down. And I'm quite comfortable in that space at this level, at this performance elite level. Happy to do head coach, anything else, but at this level, no. So I think, to answer it as quickly as I possibly can, there aren't enough black people or people from ethnic minorities with the qualifications to step up to take those big jobs as managers or head coaches to start off with. The governing bodies need to invest more and be direct in their selection of people from minority backgrounds, and make it clear that you want to make sure that you're wanting to be more representative, and accept that there's more work needs to be done with people of colour to give them the strength and the opportunities to take on those big jobs. And believe in yourself, believe in your abilities, and that's it.
Yeah.
Jermaine, Leah, do you have anything else to add on that?
I would say, from the football perspective, that in the Premier League there's one black manager, and that's Patrick Vieira. And there are managers who have the credentials, but there's no trust. Now, Patrick Vieira had to go to America to get any kind of kudos, if you want, and then he moved to France. It did really well. Now he's at Crystal Palace. The journey's a lot longer, and people get tired of that. There needs to be more trust, because, and Dwight York said something a few years ago, people don't trust him because of what he did in his playing years, because he was the party guy. And I think your background, your past does have a huge influence on what happens. So you do need to make sure that you are presenting yourself well, because people are always they will dig deep everywhere they can. And that's what the media do. So you can't hide your past. But I just think that there needs to be more trust. If you don't see people up there, you're not going to aspire, because in your head you're just thinking, well, I can't do it because no one gets the opportunity to do it. Therefore, what is the point of spending your money, spending your time to achieve what you're not going to reap any benefits from? So I think if we see people higher up, the chairman, the this, the that, then people will aspire to get there as well. Like, I would love to do something higher up in football. I look and I look and I don't see I can't do it, because I like to break down these barriers. I just don't have the time just now. That's the truth. But in moving here, I've not been able to pick up a team because COVID happened, blah, blah, blah. But I think you also have to have drive to want it, to be willing to break those barriers as well, and know that you can achieve I think what Maggie's done is amazing. Like, I'd love to hear her whole life story, from the police to the security to the whole netball thing, because that to me is so admirable. That's someone who's broken barriers, who knows who she is, who knows what she wants to do, and has achieved that. And there'll be a whole lot more. And I'd just like to think that the day I wake up and I'm like, okay, back into football, and this is what I want to do, I will go and I will fight for what I want. And that's because I do have that drive. But I think it would help if I did see people up there, if I saw more than just Patrick Vieira. So, yeah.
Jermaine, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'd say the opportunity, like going back, I know you comment on Patrick Vieira and stuff, but he's a professional or was a professional who's got loads of money, can fund these courses and stuff. So going way, way back to the managers who are managing local teams who are getting maybe £20 a week from their local team just to run that team. I think that giving them sort of managers the opportunity to do these courses, maybe at a discounted rate or even free, giving them the chance to kind of show that they can make it into the Premier League with the right support, with the right advice, following a role model. So yeah, I think it just goes back to that really. Like I know we spoke about the cost barrier, and I think that's a massive thing. And I feel like that could actually be one of the main reasons why there are a lot of black managers in the Premier League now, or higher up as well. I know there is the trust and the stereotypes and there's all that as well, but I feel like cost is a big thing.
Absolutely. Thank you. I just want to say huge thank you. This has been amazing. And I don't know if you can all see the chat, but you're getting a lot of love, a lot of thank yous. Jermaine, you are getting a lot of love for Girls Who Lift.
Brilliant.
Helen said, she said, what did she say? She said, Girls Who Lift was fantastic. Jermaine unleashed a gang of feral women. We loved that. Teaching us great technique. We loved it. We miss it. You changed our lives, Jermaine. So yeah, we want more feral women. Come on, we love feral women. So yeah, hopefully we can bring that back with Active Hud. But yeah, so much love for you all. Maggie, a lot of comments about you being a legend in the netball world. So yeah,
too kind. So
you've all been amazing. So I'm gonna finish off. So yeah, just huge thank you to you all. If you did enjoy today's event, if you did enjoy today's event, it would be great if you could fill in the feedback survey that we'll be sending out next week and let us know your thoughts. You can also tweet us at HUD_HRG and rave about our amazing speakers. The recording, as I said, will be sent out so you can share it with your friends and colleagues. And I'm just going to get on my soapbox a little bit here. But moving forward, I just think it's essential that outside of these events, we keep having these conversations, you know, outside of Black History Month. I know I'm probably preaching to the converted here. But yeah, we just need to continue to challenge and push for change and improvement. You know, and to my white colleagues, you know, allies, you know, continue to do your research, use your initiative, but, you know, speak to your black staff, speak to your friends and family, speak to students, but really listen, and ensure that, you know, this trust we're building and conversations aren't all in vain, and that we're actually in real change. So yeah, that's kind of my little spiel. But yeah, I just want to say it again, thank you so much to you all because this has been fantastic.
Can I just say something?
Yeah, go for it, Leah.
I'm actually just plugging Jermaine's book here because so Jermaine has written this book. He's written 2 books, right? But this is one of them. And I think this is really important because it's a book that you can read to your little child, whether you're black, whether you're white, whether you're Asian, whatever. And it basically, the gist of it is you can be whoever and whatever you want. You can break down barriers. He wrote this for his son, and it is the most adorable thing. At the back, it's got pages that you can color in. You can get it on Amazon, and it's like such a good little Christmas present for a child. And it's just emphasizing to them, whoever you want to be, go and be that person. Don't let anything stop you. So that's my little plug. You're welcome, Jermaine.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I don't need to say anything else now.
Yeah, Jermaine, I think you might need to pay Leah for that. Some good promoting. The Christmas plug-in now as well. But yeah, so yeah, we're gonna finish up now. But yeah, thank you all so much. What a great way to start Friday. What a great way to start weekend. I hope you all have a fab rest of the day, fab weekend, and enjoy the rest of Black History Month. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, Lauren.
you all so much.
Bye.
Take care.